Let's get started with the personality component of chapter 5. And so this is entitled Who Am I? And again, we talked about earlier about the whole Maslow's experience when we talked about the life lesson, failure is not an option. But we also realize there's a real pull to belong and a real strong urge to be part of a group or other people that validate us and make us feel like we're part of this group. We're actually just, it's in our DNA. So you haven't done anything wrong by wanting to do that. And I certainly don't want to encourage you to, say, oh, pull away from everybody and be an island to yourself. That's incredibly unhealthy. What I'm saying is that because we have this need to belong, it's really important to understand who we are as individuals and who really is the authentic me. I mean, I don't know if you've ever lived your life to where you were with a group and you said in your head, like, gosh, this really isn't something I like. I don't agree with what they're saying, but if I speak up, then guess what's going to happen? I'm not going to be part of this group anymore. And rejection is a hard pill to swallow. It's very tough. And so I've been there. And I've hated myself for it and thought, why am I pretending to be somebody that I'm not? I'm just not like these people. I'm more like a salmon. I keep swimming upstream. And although I want to fit in with the rainbow trout, I keep going upstream in the other direction. And so I really struggled with that for a really long time. And it wasn't until that I started really starting to understand personality theory and who I was that I could actually love myself and be who I am authentically, because I'm part of a much bigger puzzle. And so we all can't be clones. We should not be clones. We don't want to raise our children to be clones because they have unique gifts and talents that they're going to make a very unique contribution to this world. And I am no different, and you are no different in that respect. And so we want to really discover who we are, but how we can actually leverage it to enjoy it and say, wow, now I get all of this. And so now another thing that I want to talk about, personality theory, is something that stood out to me many years ago. There's tons of personality theories out there. And so we are not going to teach Myers-Briggs. So don't think that we are, because we're not. And there's DISC, and there's color profiles, and there's animal color or animals, and all kinds of different personality theories out there that says, hey, this is who you are. And one of the things that really bothered me about this is when I worked for a large organization, they were taking all these different profiles, and it's fun to do, of course, and we do want to know about ourselves. And but this one individual happened to walk by me. He was actually the CEO, and he walked by, and I greeted him, and he was very dismissive, and so he just walked off, didn't greet me or anything. And my colleague said, oh, don't worry, don't take it personal. He's a D. And drivers, they're just that way. They just move forward, and so I thought, okay, now let me get this right. Because this guy in this profile was the DISC measurement tool, he's a D, he gets a free pass to be rude and a free pass to be indifferent to people who work with him. And that really was troublesome. And I noticed that a lot of my friends and associates did the same thing. They said, oh, well, this is who I am, and because of that, and they all were giving themselves like permission to behave badly. And that really bugged me, because I thought, gosh, understanding who we are should not inflate bad manners. It should not inflate bad habits. It should give us the opportunity to say, wow, there's some downsides to this personality trait that I have. Maybe I should work on them. And so, but most people don't do that. They kind of do it in a superficial way where they say, hey, I'm an extrovert, and hey, I'm this, and so this is what I get to be, period. And so I will take this from a different angle. And so I want you to be able to extract from this something that is going to be, I think, very profound in your life. And it not only is going to help you pursue your purpose, but you also be able to understand other people. And maybe you can share with them some of these things that you're learning and say, look, you know what? There's a better way to live out your personality. And it's not in the restrictive way that you're doing it, because that's how we're going to look at it, that people actually do personality theories, and they're very restrictive. They say, if you're a D, you're a D. If you're an extrovert, you're an extrovert. If you're a tiger, you're a tiger. And I say there's much more to life and we were designed much more intuitively and bigger than can be, you know, really boxed in a small letter or number with our personality. So let's get with this, okay? All right, so you have your letters and your numbers. And so as you can see, I've changed some of this languaging just so that it's a little bit more contemporary so that we understand it. So we have extroverts. Those are the ones that work outside of their head. So everything above this line is outside of your head, just so that you understand this graph. Everything below the line is inside your head. And you can see that we have it graded from 0 to 100. So we have extrovert, seeing. This means you kind of need proof. You have to see it to believe it. Then you have thinking, and then you have the J, which in the other theory said it was judgment, and it's like, oh, that's kind of a bad rap. And so what it really means is just do it. So you're the action kind of person. On the other side, which is, again, inside your head, is the introvert. You prefer privacy inside, you know, you're kind of quiet. You have, or if you have N in your personality, it's insight. It was intuition, but insight says you can see things kind of like almost futuristically. You're like, wow, I guess I know what's going to happen. And so you just have those gut intuitions. It's kind of like knowledge that you just suddenly have access to. So we call it insight. You have feelings, emotions, and then you have the P, which is put it off. So you kind of procrastinate. You're not under any time constraints. You're much more laid back, kind of a beach boy kind of guy, if you will. And so let's take a look at this and see how this plays out. And so with the extroverts, as I said, they prefer to talk outside. And so these are people who you know, and maybe you're one of them, that you're an extrovert. So I want you to look at your numbers, because these are really going to tell us something about your personality. Now, here's what I love about it. You know, just like natural law requires homeostasis. So if something goes wrong, you know, we get a storm, and then we get, you know, calm weather. We have droughts, and then we have rain. And so just like nature tries to create homeostasis, the balance of nature, in our bodies, it's no different. And so if you don't drink enough water, you get thirsty or dehydrated. If you eat too much, you get fat, and so you have to eat less in order to lose weight. And so if you are sick, you get a fever. And so what it's just saying is that your body is doing this little tug of war inside, trying to create balance. And that's really what we're after. And so the whole idea of personality theory is to create a safe place so that we can grow and that we can feel confident, and we're not experiencing or playing out the stresses that may be happening out in the world. And so our personality will reflect what's going on inside of us. So we really can't cheat nature when you think about it. And so this line that separates the outside of the head and the inside of the head is considered to be 0. So think of that as a measuring tool, that it's actually 0. And from 0 to 100, you have this measuring tool, the highest being 100. Okay, so look at your numbers. And I have a question. Are your numbers, are any of those numbers over 20? Now, the reason why we chose 20 is that typically with 20 on this graded scale, it means that this is your dominant trait. So this is your go-to kind of trait. So if you're more than 20, it's dominant. So if you start going above 20, it's really becoming really entrenched. And so as a result of that, I want you to take a look at the next page. Anything over 20 that starts to go up is indicating that you're experiencing some stress somewhere in your life. And so let's just say you're an extrovert. And as an extrovert, you're 30%, 40%, 60%. I've met several 100% extroverts. And what happens is the higher you are on this scale, the further away you can see that you're from 0. Now, what's at 0? The other side. And so the further away you are from 0, the further you are away from understanding the other side of that personality trait. And so here's some examples I want to explain to you about what happens with these interactions. So I knew a gal, and she was struggling with her husband, and they came to me and they said they were going to get a divorce. And I said, well, hey, I'll tell you what, why don't you go through Core Purpose, and whether you decide to get a divorce or not get a divorce, either way, you will be in a much better position after you go through the class. So they did. And so she was a 76% extrovert, and he was a 76% introvert. And they were not talking. So they were like 150 points away from each other. And there was no discussion taking place. So we're going to show you actually how to fix that. And that's exactly what they did. And now they're just like newlyweds. It's really quite surprising. They've been married for almost 30 years now. And so it's really exciting to see how it does transform people, because we really just want to understand who we are. And so the whole extrovert thing is indicating that there is, if you have a high level of extroversion and you're talking all the time, it's just indicating that you have a need for control. And so you're like, okay, I've got a need for controlling all this communication because I'm feeling insecure. And so how it plays against each one of these traits is this. So let's say you have a high extrovert. The high extrovert talks their thoughts, okay, everything. They're talking. I'm driving, I'm narrating what's happening. I see a bird that just flew by me. Oh my gosh, this guy just, cut me off in traffic. He's driving too slow. And you know what? I just noticed that they're putting up new guardrails, and hey, look up, there's a Starbucks coming up. So this is the person that's narrating their thoughts. And so an introvert who is a high introvert is going to withhold that information. And in fact, the introvert's going to say, I don't want to give as much information up as you want me to give up. And so I'm just going to sit here. And the bigger the numbers are for the introvert, the less they talk. And so the extrovert is thinking, wow, I'm telling this introvert everything. They're not responding. I don't trust them, because they must be plotting. They must be planning to take my job. They're talking behind my back. And so I don't trust the introvert. And the introvert is saying, I don't trust this extrovert, because this person is saying everything that's in their head. They don't do anything that they say that they're going to do. And because I know what they're thinking, I don't trust them. See how that interplays? And so neither one of them have really done anything wrong, but it's just the reasoning or reading of that whole expression of a high value. Same thing with seeing and insight. We kind of become the nemesis of one another if we're not careful. So with seeing, we're saying, hey, we want proof. And somebody who has high numbers with the S in their personality, they're saying, hey, I want proof. You need to tell me what's going on. If it's not going to take care of today, I'm not interested in what you think is going to happen at the end of the week, or because we made this decision. I just want you to stick to the knitting and take care of today. That's all I'm interested in. Don't tell me what your gut feelings are. And the person with N or insight in their personality, they're going, man, this guy was seeing, or this S, he's a hardcore guy. He doesn't care. I've got this gut feeling. I know something's going to happen with this decision that they made, but he's completely disregarding that. And so as a result of that, you get this tension between the two. So the seeing person thinks the insight guy's crazy. The insight guy thinks the guy that has the seeing in strong personality trait is unbending, unyielding, and absolutely has no vision. But keep in mind, the person with the seeing part of their personality, that trait, it works for present day, but the one with insight looks into the future. So you have that clash, okay? Now let's go to thinking and feeling. Okay, so somebody that's high in the thinking realm will process information in order to solve a problem, and relationships may be collateral damage to that. And so their thinking is, well, the bottom line is, we need to cut expenses in our company. So Joe makes the most money in his department, so out he goes. And it'll save us this amount of money each year, and this will be great, and we'll do better. Well, the feeling person says, hey, wait a minute. Joe was with us when we started this company. He makes a lot of money because he's been here the longest. He's loyal. He's got a family. He's got his life invested into this. And if you if you fire him, he's going to, in his 50s, he's got to go try to find a job, which he's probably not going to make the amount of money he's been working here and receiving. You can't do this to him. Okay, see the conflict? And so the thinker is looking at the feeler saying, you're too soft. You use relationships to solve problems, and that's never going to work for you. And so that's not what's going to happen. And you know, you just got too many emotions going, and I think you're unstable. Okay, the feeler looks at the thinker and says, you are Iceman. You have no feelings. You don't care about people. You're the reason why our world is in the place it is in, because you simply don't care. And because the feeler, actually, they make decisions based upon how it will impact relationships. And so they would not use relationships as collateral, because that is too costly for them, because people with an F in their personality actually have an identity that's tied up in the relationships that they have. So you see how we can have this conflict. Okay, let's move on to just do it and put it off. So the just do it guy is, hey, let's just do it. Okay, we need to get this done. Let's do it ahead of schedule. Let's get it done so we can just keep marching away. And we can't, you know, do the next project unless this one's finished. We have to finish this one. It's important to finish it. Let's close the deal. Let's end it. But the guy that likes to put it off or has P in his personality says, hey, why are you such a slave driver? You know, you're trying to micromanage us. And, you know, we have plenty of time. It's not due till midnight, so we have until 11:59 to work on it. And let's just, you know, enjoy the ride. Something might happen. We might have to change our, you know, pattern. We might have to change our strategy. So let's just relax and just, you know, just take it easy. You're going to have a heart attack if you don't calm down. And so the J is looking at the P as somebody who's lazy, doesn't follow through, has too many irons in the fire, and does one thing after another and doesn't complete any of them. And the P sees the J as the slave driver, somebody who's unbendable, micromanager, and not a nice guy overall. Okay, so you can see the conflict. And this is what happens if your values are higher than 20 or 25. Because then it's indicating there's stress somewhere, and so you're kind of going up in that realm, and you're saying, you know, this has got to be done. So the extrovert's going to talk more, the introvert's going to talk less and be territorial. The seer is going to say, hey, we're going to get it done. I don't even want to talk to anybody that thinks about tomorrow. We got work to do today, and that's all I'm interested in is proof. And if you can't provide me with proof more than a gut feeling, I don't want you in my office. Okay? And then the guy with the insight, if you're operating at a high level of insight, you're ignoring potential facts that might be necessary to come to a conclusion. So you can't rely just on the insight. There does need to be a joining of the facts, okay, which is the seeing part. The thinker and the feeler, if they have high values, they're not communicating, they resent each other. And the J's and the P's, they're mad because somebody's not doing their job, and the other one feels like they're the only ones doing the job or doing all the work. So you can see how it creates a lot of stress. And so that really was, I thought, really fascinating, because we see this all the time, not only in families, but we oftentimes see it at work. And regardless of the work, whether it's a faith-based or if it's a secular-based office, we see this happening all the time. And it's not because people are intentionally trying to be a thorn in your flesh and trying to create conflict. They really are operating within their personality. And if they're feeling stress, then that trait that they feel the most protective in is going to actually get a bigger fever, if you will. So the numbers are even going to get higher for that. And then they get further away from balance. So how do we fix this? And so here's something that I found really fascinating with this. Again, going back to the idea that I don't want to be pigeonholed, that I am a certain personality trait. So my traits are ENFJ. And so what we did is we really started to look at these numbers, because my numbers were off the charts. And, you know, that's during the time that I was having health issues. And so I made a decision that I was going to intentionally practice delayed gratification with my personality. And I had a lot of pushback on that. People were like, no, that's bad for you. You know, and you might even hear people say, well, God created me to be this way. Well, God may have created you with certain personality traits, but he didn't create you to have exaggerated personality traits to where it's difficult for you to take in good information, and it's difficult for you to work with other people. Okay, so that we have to establish, because what God really wants and what we all want is we want somebody that's stable and has some balance to them. Now, so what we're going to talk about is actually how to lower those numbers, and here's why we want to lower these numbers. This is really important. Okay, so if I'm able to lower these numbers, is it possible that I can actually access the other non-dominant trait? So what I'm saying is, okay, let's say I'm an extrovert, and I have now dropped my number from 80 down to 2, which is actually what I did. So my extrovert is only 2%. So I'm closer to 0. So do you think that during that process and now I'm able to actually speak to the introvert? Yes or no? Excuse me. Of course I can. And so do you want to just, if you're an extrovert, do you want your world just to be with extroverts? Is that the extent of your reach that you're interested in your lifetime? Or would you like to extend your reach to reach more people? So if you are an extrovert, do you think it's important then to understand the language of the introvert? You bet it is. And if you have children and you're an extrovert, I doubt if all of them are extroverts. I'm sure you have at least one that's an introvert, or at least a closet introvert, okay? Because they might be feeling overwhelmed by the extroverts. And so it's important to understand that we actually have, here's what's so cool about this. You actually have, we all actually have all of these traits inside of us. So just because you're an extrovert does not mean you're just an extrovert. It means you're also an introvert. It's just not dominating you. And so what I want you to do, and I don't have it in the actual program, so I refer people to watch this. Now, when I do an actual live seminar, which I'd encourage you to come to because they're really fun, we actually show them on the screens. And so go to like YouTube or something, but type in Lady in the Water or the left arm bigger than right arm, and it's a YouTube clip, and it's a very short clip of this movie called Lady in the Water. And so this guy decides to be his own lab experiment. And he says, this is what I've decided to do. So he only works out his left side. And so he's got like a huge, well-developed bicep and well-developed leg muscle because it's only the left side, and he doesn't do anything with his other side, so he looks really weird. And so he's got this big muscle here and this girly muscle on this side. And so that's a great illustration of our personalities. And so with this guy, do you think he would be more effective if he worked out both sides and he was buff on both sides? Of course he'd be more effective. He could lift better. He probably, you wonder if it's hurting his back. And so, but he would be more effective in terms of what he could lift, and his body wouldn't look so weird. And so he would definitely do well if he lifted with the other arm, and so created an equal proportionate balanced muscle mass on both sides. And so that's our personality. So if we have a real strong personality trait with an extrovert or any of these values, whether it's extrovert, introvert, feeling, thinking, any of these things, what happens is that if we balance that down and we start exercising the underdeveloped side of our personality, and that's huge, okay, this is going to be a biggie in your life, and you really need to do it. If you practice delayed gratification, remember we just learned about that, it feels awkward. But these are one of the ways that you can develop and it's in the science of self-control, you can develop self-control by practicing this. So if you're an extrovert, that means you practice what? Being an introvert, that means you're the last one to talk. You don't drive, you let somebody else do the driving in a meeting, and you may not even have anything to offer. Now, for the sake of explaining introvert, extrovert, and speaking specifically to the introvert, introverts are thinking, I can't speak up, because if you're an introvert, you need to learn to be an extrovert. You need to develop that other side of your personality, that other muscle. And so here's what happens is that the introvert says, oh, I can't possibly do that. If I do that, I'm going to end up, being embarrassed. People might not like me. They might laugh at me. And so all the anxiety that you feel inside about speaking up is the same anxiety that an extrovert feels if you ask them not to speak up. You say, stop talking. Then what happens is that they because they are like, oh my gosh, if I don't speak, people might not like me. What if they forget about me? What if they think that I'm not in the game anymore? And they have all these crazy thoughts too, just like an introvert does. So the point is the feeling is the same. So you can't say that you feel worse than the extrovert if somebody asks you to speak up. You have to just do it. And it's just as hard for the extrovert to not talk as it is for the introvert to talk. Okay, so there's no way that you can say it's worse for me. It's not. And the same goes for each one of these dominant traits that you tested for. And so you have to look at it and say, okay, how am I going to work in the opposite? And so that means that the seeing person has to actually, say, okay, I've got to really like settle down and not be so dogmatic about doing it for today. I need to listen to people who might have some insight into this that I don't see. And so as you are learning from these people and learning from practicing working in the other opposite trait, you're going to see something magnificent happen. Because here's what I think. I think most people really don't see their full purpose because it's hidden in the opposite trait of their personality. And I'm going to give you an example with this. So when I wrote this program, and it took me 10 years of research, and remember, I was an 80% extrovert. I demanded high communication, and because I thought, well, first of all, that's what I need to do. As part of my job, I had a large group of people that worked for me, and so I was very demanding about it. And when I really was honest about it, it was just because I was worried that if I didn't know everything that was happening, then something I would miss, and that would create a problem for me. And I didn't want that to occur in my life. And so that's no way to run an organization. It puts people under high stress. And so when I started writing this, though, I suddenly slipped into the introvert world because I needed to do a lot of internal processing and a lot of working through a lot of these theories and a lot of these applications and how it would play out in people's lives. And so as I was doing this, I developed some very strong introvert traits. And so my numbers from extrovert dropped, and they stayed down because now I really enjoy the other side. I really enjoy my introvert time. I really enjoy peace and quiet. I don't have to have noise on all the time. I don't have to have music first thing in the morning or the last thing when I go to bed. I do enjoy the quiet. And so here's the beauty of that. I'm actually giving my brain a rest. And so it's not constantly on this, go, 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 go. And I'm not needing that to feel secure. And the same thing as an introvert, I recognize that I need stimulation outside of myself in order to stay healthy. And so each one of these traits offer a wonderful perspective and viewpoint of who you are as a human being. And so when I wrote these programs in the opposite trait, that's where I really discovered my life purpose. And so if I was able to develop all of those so I could easily tap into each one of those traits when I need it, when it was necessary, when it was called for in a situation, this was massive in terms of personal development. And so personality development says, don't get locked into a label because you took a test and they said you're a D or you're a P or you're a zebra or whatever, or you're green. Don't get locked into that. Realize that there's so much more to you as a human being in terms of development and in terms of what you can offer this world. And that means that you can be all of those traits. You don't have to get locked into them, and we don't want you to get locked into them. So I think this was an extremely exciting revelation, if you will. And we love teaching this, and this is massive in terms of how you feel about yourself, because once I dropped those numbers and they got lower to 0, what it meant is that, you know what, I'm just really feeling better about myself. So remember, you work in the opposite trait. And that might mean that you take a look at the previous page in the personality theory and you practice the traits that that one has. So as you can see on this, the extrovert thinks out loud, enjoys socializing, values communication. If you're an introvert, you need to do that. And conversely, if you're an extrovert, you need to read about the introvert and you need to practice those traits. And you need to do it every day. And if someone says, hey, you know what? you're going to be a 0. Your personality is going to evaporate if you get to 0. First of all, that doesn't happen. It means you're probably extremely balanced, because you can go into either side of those, and you'll be more fun than ever. And your genius lies in the underdeveloped side of your personality. I'm convinced of it. And your purpose is there. And so don't let people discourage you. You're not going to lose the fun side of your personality. The core and the essence of your personality will maintain the same. If you are by default an extrovert, even if you're a 1, and even if sometimes you're an introvert, you will always be an extrovert. You'll default to that. And so it's the authentic self. If you were always supposed to be an extrovert, but you just had a trauma, and so you were just too scared to talk, once you practice being an extrovert, you'll default into what you were actually designed to be. And so, but this just gives you, when you look at this, it gives you so much more places where you can communicate, where you can invest in other people. Your reach is far greater, because now you've got all these domains that you can access and understand and have reasonable and healthy communication, and maybe healthy relationships with some of these people that you thought you could never have a relationship with. And so, but now you're going to be able to do that. So you're going to work in the opposite, which means you're going to practice delayed gratification. It's going to feel awkward at first, and some of you are going to be scared at first. But if you do, then 6 or months or 10 months or a year later, retake that task and see if your numbers are starting to drop. And if they start to drop, you're going to say, wow, I'm doing it right. And actually, this is what I'm learning from it. Because the most important thing, of course, is what I learned. And so I'm excited about this. Spend some time playing with this a little bit. And don't forget, if you do have questions, as we said in the very first part of this course, you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Alrighty, this was fun. This was exciting. I hope you enjoyed it.